Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the PrimateCast. We're your hosts, Andrew McIntosh.
And Chris Martin.
And today we're going to be having a nice conversation with Dr. Tomoaki Nishihara.
Well, you will be having a nice conversation.
That's right. I will be having a nice conversation with him, and we'll be joined here by Dr. David Hill, who's another faculty at CICASP here.
That's right. I was out of town for this interview, unfortunately.
You were. I believe you were probably in Africa at the time.
Mm-hmm. That's
eating
right.
your popcorn and snake.
Yep. And coincidentally,
we will be talking about Africa, not West Africa specifically, mostly Central Africa, but also West African primates as well. Now, Dr. Nishihara has been working for the Wildlife Conservation Society for a number of years. He's a PhD graduate of Kyoto University in the Laboratory of Human Evolution Studies. And this kind of links back into our last podcast with Dr. Cricket Sands as well, because they've worked in similar areas. I know Dr. Nishihara has also worked at or with people working at the Guologo Triangle, which we discussed last week in more detail on the research end specifically with cricket, but also a number of other areas in Central Africa. And not just with the primates there, but also with other animals and ecosystems in general. And it's very relevant right now because Central African Republic has recently been experiencing, along with its political unrest, this influx of poachers, illegal poaching obviously, into I believe it's the Zanga Ndoki National Park. And many elephants that typically come to these, they're called bais areas, kind of natural clearings in the forest where the elephants will congregate. And
it's not just elephants, right? A lot of animals.
Exactly. Gorillas often go, a lot of animals congregate there for the things like minerals that are left in there. Mm-hmm. And I think the situation is getting better, but through Dr. Nishihara's interview, you'll get a kind of a sense of the things that he's been dealing with.
And he's been in this area through the worst of times as well. So
that's right. He talks a little bit during the interview of the, I guess it was in the late 90s, 1997, maybe the onset of the Republic of Congo civil war there. And he was kind of stuck, and he had students stuck. And
he was asked to stay.
He toughed it out. And
by the Conservation Society that he worked for.
That's right. So he's had an interesting history. And so we're going to be talking about conservation in Central Africa, from gorillas to forest elephants, a little bit about the war, as we just mentioned, and also his experiences working in a few different countries and maybe some of the differences that he would have experienced there. The rise of ecotourism in the area and its kind of benefits and cons as well that can go along with it, such as disease transmission and things. He'll also talk a little bit about his translation of a book about forest elephants. And this was kind of dear to his heart because as he was coming out with this translated copy, he was very adamant that, especially in Japan, people need to kind of wake up to the fact that Japan is one of the only countries, or perhaps the only country, driving the forest elephant illegal ivory trade. And so he really wanted to get that message out. Mm-hmm. And so I guess we should get right into the interview.
Okay.
So here's David and myself with Dr. Tomoaki Nishihara. I guess maybe we should start with, so how did you get started with WCS?
Originally I was a Japanese student from Kyoto University, but when I finished my PhD, just eventually WCS project to the same site, and then just it was an option whether I'm going to get a job in Japanese university or continue staying in the field with WCS. So I just got a latter option.
So where were you working during your PhD?
During the PhD, it's just in Republic of Congo, in Ndoki National Park. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you were working in Kyoto University, the Laboratory of Human Evolution Studies, correct?
Correct.
So you came out of the School of Primatology, but then obviously when you start working in conservation, you can't only focus on single species, even
no, just
as charismatic as they could be.
Generalist.
That's right. So how important then is that in your activities to be very broad spectrum like that?
Because what I found in my long-term field, staying in the forest, of course, originally I was interested in apes because they are close to human beings to find out human evolution theory. But the forest is composed of with various species, not only apes, but also other mammals and insects and mushrooms and everything.
That's right.
That's a total ecosystem where we have to conserve.
And so how did you find that transition from being a researcher into being a conservation worker, dedicated?
Okay. One thing is my previous boss, he's American, Mike Fay. So he mentioned me, you are Japanese. Because of your guys, forest elephants going to be disappeared.
Wow.
Because of poaching. So you should do something. Yeah, of course, I was aware of that Japanese using ivory, but I never know the links between forest elephant, ivory, and Japanese people. So that one of the things I started to learn what and how Japanese people going to ivory. So up to now, I'm still only one Japanese who is working for conservation in the Central African areas for many years. So I have to do something as a Japanese to make a exchange information between Africa and Japan.
So as a researcher in the beginning, how do you see the continued role of research in the conservation activities that you're involved in?
Yes, still, we need scientific research because we need scientific information about mammals distribution and density and the conservation status. We can't say anything with emotion, because gorillas are pretty, because whales are intelligent. We have that is not the way how to explain people about conservation. So still we need a good scientific research.
So does WCS directly support scientific research?
Yes, actually most of our staff originated from scientists. Even now they are managers. So our principal role is scientific research and then apply to conservation.
So just backtracking a little bit, you mentioned during your talk that I believe it was in 1997 when you were actually in Congo during the Civil War. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, when the war started, people said this war is not really big issues. You can stay in Brazzaville and you can go back to the forest. But actually, the war they started so crazy, and then I was with WCS people. These are American, but it was interesting to see how the French military going to evacuate people. French people is a priority.
Yes.
American, Japanese, later. But luckily, we had the last evacuate airplane to go to Gabon. But unfortunately, at that time, I left my Congolese student in the forest, so I needed to go back to Novalendoki somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But Japanese embassy people in Gabon said you can't go there. But I refused. Sorry, I have to go back. And then so through Cameroon, I went back to Novalendoki to pick up Congolese student to get him back to his family areas. And then Mike Fay, my previous boss, decided I should stay in the base camp alone. And all other white people, experts and researchers already evacuated. I don't know why Mike Fay told me that, but I said no problem, because we knew that if nobody there, military people coming to break down base camp and steal all food and fuel and beers and they are going to the forest in the national park to kill animals. So somebody should stay. So actually, I stayed there more than 6 months with Congolese responsible. And then sometime military came. But they were so kind.
Okay.
As soon as I started speaking local language, they were happy about that. So they forget about, chasing me.
Wasn't it frightening though before, just sort of waiting?
No, they are not frightening me. They explained me, we are here to protect you.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, and then of course they ask money, to pay. So but sure. we agreed, no problem, we can pay. So actually some military stayed with us. It was not comfortable, but there was no way.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it could be a lot worse. It's a very interesting story. So, and then after that, maybe a few years later, you started to move. So you left the Congo
Yes.
for WCS in Gabon.
Yeah. Because the same boss, Mike Hui, started another project called Megatransit, walking through the forest from northern Congo to Gabonese coast
Right.
to find out the intact place of both countries. So I wanted to participate in the project, but not working with him, just to support him, logistics, and coordinate with the National Geographic team, because National Geographic funding this project.
I see.
So that's why both of us moved to Gabon. And then later we created WCS Gabon. WCS Gabon never existed. And then at the same time, Mike Hui himself pushed the Gabonese president to create national parks. And then president decided 13 new national parks,
Wow.
which is more than 10% of Gabonese land size.
But so now you're back in the Congo. So can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about how, I mean, was it very distinct experiences for you to be in the two different countries? And
Yes, Gabon is actually quite difficult country to work with people, including government people. They are so bureaucratic, so things never forward. Even local people, they don't want to go to the forest, so it's difficult to arrange a mission, any research mission or conservation mission. And then, but I wanted to continue the conservation in Gabon because we were the person to push the president to create a national park, and then I didn't want to lose national parks. But eventually, 3 years ago, the WCS Congo called me back. Please come back to Congo because. And then what I found in Congo, most of the WCS Congo project just went down. Just a poor management by the other experts, or corruption started from the government people, and lots of human population, etc., and lots of exploitation activities. So 3 years ago, what I tried to do is how to bring back the project as it was. But still, we have a lot of challenge against corruptions, exploitation activities, illegal activities.
So how many people does WCS currently employ in Congo?
I think less than 10 experts, and then between 200, 300 local staff.
Well, it's a big operation.
Yes, because we have 7 or 8 different projects.
And how do you generally get along with, not only the local people in the areas which you're trying to protect, but also some of the organizations that are trying to exploit the areas?
Just dialogue. We have to continue dialogue with different local populations because they have a different vision and traditions. So that's a pain, but we have to continue. It's a long-term issues, and then try to much more sustainable, stable status of conservation.
You talked a little bit about this in your talk earlier, but the difficulty the difficulties in trying to get, say, people from the local logging organizations to comply with some of the measures that you guys have set up. So the example you gave was when they have to go to the bathroom and the toilet to dig like a giant hole and then have to bury it. But this is completely absurd from a local person's perspective. Right?
Yes, but we have to teach them. But this is a way how we can save apes, for instance, because apes are obviously close to human beings. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, maybe they are going to die just because of a human presence. Even I'm talking about ecotourism. We have to keep the minimum persons who can visit the gorillas at a distance and with masks.
So I want to get back to the ecotourism in a second, but what kind of a reception do you get when you tell people that they need to behave in these ways to really protect the animals in the forest?
No, we just explained that all tourists, once they get to the base camp, this is an obligation. If they don't want, please go back to your home.
Yeah, it's a very good point. So
and then we requested, doing some vaccinations before coming to the national park. If they don't have proof, Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. No gorillas.
Yeah.
And so how do you see the development, future development of ecotourism projects within the context of conservation? Because it is a trade-off.
But I don't think ecotourism can develop like, Kenya or South Africa, because it's a tropical forest. We have always limited access and a limited number of tourists who can get in the forest, because not in savanna. So yeah, of course we can get some revenue from tourism to contributing to conservation, but it should have a limit. And then so that's why for the government people, more exploitation activities, either timber or minerals and petrol, that are more attractive to get money.
And does WCS run the ecotourism itself, or does it sort of assist other people to set up?
Yes, by ourselves, but still it's a pilot stage. And then, of course, we are not professional, so we want to make a transition to the professional ecotourism operator maybe in the next few years. Yeah.
And so you talked also about the development of some of the projects that you're involved with. So you mentioned, I think, four different sites.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about each of those just briefly, maybe?
Okay. Actually, I'm not working inside, but I'm just coordinating all the project. So Berry study, including that also tourism, just observing elephants and gorillas and buffaloes from the fixed platforms. So this is simply contributing protection of the bay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to observe animals in terms of research, even for the tourism. So that, and with a long-term study, we can find out life history of gorillas, for instance. And the Mondika project, we just continued habituated gorillas to following their daily activities for research and also ecotourism, who wants to see Western lowland gorillas. Mondika is the best site in the Central African areas where we can see gorillas directly. And the Guarago project is mainly chimpanzees that are very naive. So they succeeded to habituate many chimps over there, so they can continue the scientific research following their activities. No tourism over there up to now, but they are going to evaluate impact from the logging activities, because surrounding Guarago areas logging activities happen. So they are going to find out what kind of impact coming.
You made a really nice anecdote during your presentation about the chimpanzees there.
Yeah.
That when people, or I guess maybe you guys or the researchers arrived, the chimpanzees acted with such curiosity towards the researchers.
Exactly.
So they were completely naive, basically.
Yeah.
So do you see then any problems, potential problems in the future of continuing these new habituation projects?
Yes, still, it's difficult to say, but I would say we have a risk if we continue make a new habituated groups, because who knows, maybe in the next few years we have another civil war, and then who are going to protect the park? Maybe I'm staying again, or something wrong happen. One day government decide, okay, we forget about the park, and they are going to explore something, and then if the many apes are habituated easily to kill them, even the disease transmission.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that actually influencing the markets for rainforest products is likely to be the most effective way of saving them in the long run? Or do you think that work on the ground, trying to reduce the bushmeat trade and trying to reduce local exploitation is more important?
First, maybe population growth control somehow. It's not only natural growth, but also human immigration for exploitation activities, etc. And then second is maybe we can try to reduce the demand, international demand for tropical timber, for instance. But it's also very, very difficult, big challenge. But still we can request each logging companies to get, FSC certificate to minimize impact for the wildlife and general environmental issues. I think that's the only way, and then maybe they can contribute to conservation project either through finance or any conservation operation. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 final points that you might want to discuss a little bit. The first is your book. Can you tell us about that?
Okay. So recently I finished publish one book about forest elephant, translated from English into Japanese, because I wanted show about forest elephant to Japanese people. The biggest reason is Japanese is the only nation in the world who are going to specifically using forest elephant ivory. So Japanese people should understand what is the link between our Japanese ivory use and forest elephant poaching and illegal ivory trade. So that will be in the bookshop soon, and also Amazon website.
Okay. Can you tell us the name of the book?
Okay. English title is Hidden Giants, and then Japanese title is Shirarezaru Morinozo.
Okay. And the second thing was ENEOS.
Yes. So ENEOS is the Japanese biggest oil company, and then they have a character which is a gorillas. So they wanted to contribute something for gorilla conservation. So they chosen 2 projects. One project in the eastern lowland gorillas, managed by Yamagiwa-san, and then second project to our project, because I'm also Japanese, western lowland gorilla conservation. So specifically to Mondica project for habituated gorillas, tourism development and research.
Dr. Nishihara, thank you very much for joining us on the PrimateCast.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks very much.
David, it was a pleasure to co-host with you.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Well, you're more than welcome anytime.
Okay.
You have been listening to the PrimateCast, a podcast series dedicated to the study and conservation of primates around the world. Brought to you by the Centre for International Collaboration and Advanced Studies in Primatology of the Primate Research Institute of Kyoto University. Visit us online at www.cicaspr.pu.ac.jp/news/podcasts and follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/theprimatecast and on Twitter at theprimatecast.